Testing, testing, testing. Can you hear me okay? Good. All right.
folks ready? Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Jonathan Dean, and I am the plaintiff who settled, previously anonymous plaintiff who settled with the Archdiocese for $1 million earlier this year, arising out of a case where I alleged that I was sexually assaulted by a priest as a child. I have a prepared statement that I'd like to read for a few minutes, after which I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has. These are personally, what I'm about to read is personally a very important message to me to get out there, and also for treating my post-traumatic stress disorder. So here we go. When I was sexually assaulted as a child, my world stopped being about all the things that make childhood a special and carefree time. I was traumatized, and from that point forward, the trauma forever changed the course and trajectory of my life. As I grew into my teenage years, not knowing any better, I resorted to abusing drugs and alcohol, sex addiction, and other self-destructive behaviors to numb my pain, and my life went dramatically off course. As I grew into adulthood, I found myself consumed by addiction and self-destructive behavior. Casual drinking became excessive, dangerous, and life-threatening, and my life became a shadow of what I had wished for it to be. I contemplated suicide, but I did not even understand why I wanted so badly to kill myself as an adult, because the sexual assault that was the source of my illness had taken place over a decade ago, and I had long ago repressed the memory of it. To put this moment and this settlement in perspective for me, today has been over 10 years in the making from the time that my memory repression broke in summer of 2013. And I first remember that 20 years earlier, in 1993, I had been raped by a priest 4 times. Still to this day, having been raped as a child has left a darkness in my soul that I cannot shake and cannot leave behind. It is very common for survivors of childhood sexual assault to repress their memories. That is an established scientific fact. So it begs the question of, why does Missouri have any statute of limitations for legal claims arising out of childhood sexual abuse? Now, when most of us think of a statute of limitations, we think, oh, we have 2 or 5 years, or however many years it is, from the time of the occurrence to file a lawsuit, and that's the extent of what you need to worry about. You either file your lawsuit in time, or you don't. But it's not that simple in cases that allege childhood sexual abuse. Because even when us victims file a lawsuit within the time window permitted by the law, the legal team aligned with the perpetrators will aggressively misuse the statute of limitations against the victim. Maybe they'll first try to trip us up with some trick questions about whether we remembered some feeling or memory earlier in time. If the trick questions don't work, maybe they just distort or flat out misrepresent some other evidence to try to get the court to dismiss the case. Missouri courts are complicit with the perpetrator's misuse of the statute of limitations. In case after case, Missouri courts have sided with the perpetrators of sexual violence and thrown credible victims who make credible claims out of court forever. That is, in fact, what the court attempted to do to my case. One day after negotiating my case to a settlement, where the smart and aggressive attorneys for the Archdiocese made a judgment that, despite their efforts to dismiss my case, it presented such a liability to their client that they needed to settle it for $1 million. One day after that, the court, still unaware that the settlement had occurred, ordered that my case be dismissed based upon the statute of limitations. In doing so, the court ignored my testimony ignored the testimony of a dozen of my family members and friends, and ignored law handed down by the Missouri Supreme Court, and on the eve of trial, dismissed my case. And the question I have is, how is this possible? Here we stand in 2023, over 20 years after the priest abuse crisis hit the mainstream, and somehow victims who present credible court cases that they were raped by priests are still struggling to be treated fairly and with dignity and taken seriously by Missouri courts. How can it be possible that a person be raped by a priest as a child, be consumed for decades with addiction, to hit bottom, and contemplate suicide, to finally regain memories of the sexual assault, then work for years in therapy to find recovery, work up the courage to file a lawsuit, put forth a credible case, and litigate it for 5 years, for the court to then say, on the eve of trial, sorry, you are out of luck because you waited too long. The fact that Missouri law has a statute of limitations for claims of childhood sexual assault is a political and legal choice to value the comfort and well-being of pedophiles over the lives and well-being of their victims. The Missouri legislature should remove all statutes of limitation for claims of childhood sexual assault. These cases need to reach trials, not be continually dismissed on legal technicalities. And anyone who disagrees has the burden to explain why cases that allege a child was sexually assaulted should ever be subject to being dismissed on a legal technicality, rather than actually addressing the victim's allegations of wrongdoing against the accused perpetrator. Allowing lawsuits that allege the sexual assault of a child to be regularly dismissed on legal technicalities jeopardizes the protection and well-being of children. My case has been reported in terms reflecting that it was a success, and perhaps that's how it may seem in this moment. I'm not sure I would label this lawsuit a success. I want my childhood back. I want my life back that I would have had I not been raped as a 10-year-old. But those moments where my life changed forever are now long gone, having taken place decades ago, and time has passed my childhood self by. Thank you for coming today. Before I wrap up and take your questions, I want to take a moment to publicly thank two people. When the Archdiocese tried to get my case dismissed, one argument that they tried was that no one told them that the priest was dangerous to children. That argument did not work for them because my elementary school principal from 30 years ago, Mrs. Lori O'Connor, came forward and said that that wasn't true. Mrs. O'Connor said that she had reported the priest to the Archdiocese for inappropriate conduct with children right around the time that I was being raped. When the attorneys for the Archdiocese attempted to change her testimony, and then my attorneys went back to her and asked her to clarify her testimony, Mrs. O'Connor told all the attorneys that she had had enough, that she had something to say, and that she planned to speak her own truth. Survivors of sexual violence need more people like Lori O'Connor, who are willing to throw down the gauntlet and stand up and speak the truth of their lived experience, however painful it might be, knowing now what we all know. I also want to recognize and thank Detective John Brody of the Chesterfield Police Department. He was on duty on a random late night in November in 2017 when I couldn't sleep, tormented by memories of being sexually assaulted, and I decided I couldn't wait any longer than that moment to file a police report against the priest who raped me. Detective Brody took the report for over an hour over the phone at midnight that night, spent weeks investigating my complaint, conducted an interview of me, gathered evidence, made phone calls, and referred my criminal complaint to the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office. When no one at the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office called me to explore my criminal complaint further, Detective Brody took note, and he called me himself. He told me he was sorry that happened to me. He considers the rape of a child a terrible evil. And he didn't know why the prosecutor's office wasn't following up on my complaint, but that he was there for me if I needed anything. When someone is raped as a child, it shatters their ability to trust anyone. But Mrs. O'Connor and Detective Brody, by just doing what they felt like was the right thing to do, did a little bit to restore my trust in the world, and I will warmly remember that and carry their attention and kindness with me for the rest of my life. They have made a profound impact on my life by just taking a small stand on behalf of me when it mattered. And lastly, I just want to say that, you all know someone, whether you know it or not, who's a survivor of rape or sexual assault. If you are given the opportunity to provide that person or person's support, please take it. If they come to you and they tell you what happened to them, how they were victimized, how they were traumatized, how they are struggling, please listen. It will make you uncomfortable, there's no doubt about it. But by just listening and saying that you are sorry that happened to them, you can make an enormous difference in that survivor's life. Recognition by another human being is far and away the most important recovery that any survivor can get as they seek to recover from the trauma of the sexual assault. And the urge to look away, to ignore, to bury our head in the sand is almost irresistible when it comes to childhood sexual abuse. Because the thought of children being sexually assaulted is so disturbing and repugnant to us all. Don't do it. Don't look away. Thank you for your time and attention. And provided I don't melt into a puddle on the floor, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has. No, there's.
Just with the settlement, it means that they don't admit guilt. Is that it, or what's the nature of the settlement?
Yeah, there is a provision in the settlement agreement specifying that they deny liability.
One piece of it is, you said the day after the settlement, the case was dismissed. I'm not an expert on the law, but typically when there's a settlement, isn't the case dismissed?
Eventually, yeah. Typically, when there's a settlement, the court will eventually dismiss the case pursuant to the terms of the settlement. But what happened here is that the Archdiocese had been actively trying to get the case dismissed. And it just so happened, it was just kind of a quirk of timing that we reached settlement terms on June 6th, but that the Archdiocese didn't withdraw their motion to dismiss after we settled. And we hadn't yet notified the court that a settlement had been reached. So the court went ahead and granted the Archdiocese motion to dismiss before we let the court know that she didn't need to rule on it.
Because they thought that the repressed memory argument wasn't going to hold, or why was it dismissed?
I can send you the court's order dismissing the case, but the court essentially said that I needed an expert to say that my memory was repressed in order to take advantage of the repressed memory exception to the statute of limitations. Now, that doesn't really make too much sense to me, because all any outside expert would do would review all the evidence and make an opinion about whether or not my memory was repressed, which is, at the end of the day, that's the judge's job. Yeah.
First of all, I just want to thank you for your vulnerability and your courage in speaking and sharing this very sensitive part of your story and what you went through with all of us here today. So thank you, sincerely. And also, I just wanted to ask, you kind of touched on this in your remarks, but can you share what changed in your mind and in your heart that gave you the strength to decide, I'm gonna go forward with filing this lawsuit? Was it the detective, or was it just having support? I'm just trying to get a sense of what happened, what was going on in your mind and your heart, because I can only imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, it was, there was a time period where, I knew I had a legal claim and I just wasn't sure if I wanted to put myself through it. And I'd even decided to not go forward with it. You get a lot of advice from people, don't dwell on the past. And I think it really was building a network of support and a network of community. I found the right people in my life who could give me support with this. And it was through those people and their support that I gained the strength to do this. And so I really stand on their shoulders today too. Yeah.
Did this case play a role in your pursuit to become a lawyer?
No, I actually, when my memory repression broke, it was right after I graduated law school. So we could maybe kind of psychoanalyze me, and maybe that's why I went to law school. I mean, who knows?
With this being the biggest settlement for a survivor like you, what impact are you hoping that this will have on the community?
I mean, I think that, the Missouri legal community, the St. Louis County Circuit Court, where a lot of these cases are heard, and the Missouri legislature really need to look at removing the statute of limitations for childhood sexual abuse for civil cases. Because, when you look at kind of prosecuting or trying to prevent childhood sexual abuse, oftentimes these perpetrators, they commit their crimes in secret behind closed doors. It's just them and a child. And so for that reason, unless there's overwhelming evidence, a prosecutor is really hesitant to take a case because, proving a case like that where it's just kind of like, a perpetrator and a child, or a perpetrator and a young adult, kind of a, he said, she said, or he said, kind of situations is very difficult to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But then when you have circumstances where the perpetrator can take advantage of a statute of limitations or manipulate it really easily, they basically are in a situation where, they can really easily evade accountability for their crimes. It's like they can really easily evade accountability for, in the criminal courts. And if they have these statutes of limitation that they can really easily manipulate into their favor, they can evade accountability in the civil courts too.
You think the Archdiocese is hiding behind the statute of limitations to protect itself?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's what you're here to bring attention to, is what I understand.
Yeah.
In the sense that abuse happened is what you're saying, and so own up for it. Don't hide behind the statute of limitations.
Yeah. Well put.
I know there was another victim as well by this priest, and there's a ton of other survivors. Have you been able to connect with other survivors?
I haven't. I would like to. It's just kind of more a matter of, I haven't gotten around to it yet.
To your knowledge, is there any Missouri lawmaker who's pushing a bill or something to help eliminate the statute?
I've been told that the Missouri Association of Trial Lawyers is pushing a bill. I also know that my attorney, who Rebecca Randall, is based out of Kansas City. I know she's also been working on that too, and I would encourage, I can get you their contact information after today. Yes.
You mentioned a lot of the reform that needs to happen in the law. What do you think that churches can do to help prevent these actions?
You know, I think at the end of the day, it's kind of a community responsibility. People need to, you know, kind of keep their eyes open and their ears open for, you know, if somebody's doing something that just doesn't seem right, then people need to report it, whether it's to, you know, kind of mandatory reporting agencies, government agencies here in Missouri, or supervisors. You know, Mrs. O'Connor, when she testified, she said that, you know, this priest was, you know, coming into classrooms and putting children on his lap and kind of bouncing them up and down on his lap and kind of, you know, blocking children in doorways so that children's heads were kind of at the level of his waistline. And she reported him for that, and she should be commended for that. And, you know,